Captain Hyunwoo stood at the main window of the colony ship New Seoul. Outside in the black space, hundreds of alien ships floated like sleeping giants. Each one was preparing for the long sleep that would keep them safe from the coming storm. The way Galactic Council had been very clear about their orders. Every species in this part of the galaxy had to enter deep sleep for the next 300 years. The void storm was coming, and it would drain the life from any creature that stayed awake. "Captain," Engineer So-young called from her control station, "we have a problem." Hyunwoo turned away from the window. So-young was one of his best officers. She never called something a problem unless it really was serious. "What is it?" "Our sleep pods are not working right," So-young said. She pointed to the screens around her station. Red warning lights blinked everywhere. "The alien ships are doing something to our systems. Their hibernation process is making our technology fail." Dr. Minho hurried over to join them. "The ship's doctor looked worried. "Captain, I have been running tests on our crew. Human bodies are not like alien bodies. The sleep methods that work for other species do not work for us." Hyunwoo felt a cold fear in his stomach. "What do you mean?" "Our brains are too active," Minho explained. "Even when we try to sleep deeply, our minds keep working. The hibernation drugs that make other species sleep peacefully make humans sick. Some of our test subjects nearly died." Through the communication system, reports came in from other human ships in the fleet. The same problem was happening everywhere. The Corvani warriors had already entered their quantum sleep pods. Their massive ships now drifted silent and dark. The Nethri had dimmed their psychic minds to almost nothing. Even the Xylorian hive minds had shut down their connections across space. But every human ship was having the same trouble. Their technology failed when they tried to copy alien hibernation methods. Their bodies rejected the deep sleep that other species entered so easily. "How long do we have?" Hyunwoo asked. So-young checked her instruments. "The storm will reach this system in 6 months. The Council says any species that stays awake during the storm will have their life force drained away. The storm feeds on conscious minds." "What about partial sleep?" Hyunwoo suggested. "Could we slow down our minds but not shut them off completely?" Minho shook his head. "I tried that on volunteers. Partial hibernation makes humans go insane. Our brains need to be either fully awake or fully asleep. There is no in-between for our species." Communications Officer Ji-hai looked up from her station. "Captain, I am getting the same reports from all human colonies and ships. None of our hibernation systems work properly. None of our people can enter the deep sleep that other species use." The bridge became very quiet. Everyone understood what this meant. While every other intelligent species in the galaxy prepared to sleep safely through the storm, humans had to make a terrible choice. They could try to force hibernation and probably die from the process, or they could stay awake and face 300 years of a storm that ate conscious minds. "Sir." "Navigation," Officer Yunji said softly. "I have been studying the data about this void storm. It is not just dangerous. It is intelligent. It learns from every mind it consumes. The more conscious beings it drains, the stronger and smarter it becomes." Hyunwoo walked back to the main window. Outside, more alien ships were going dark as their crews entered hibernation. Soon the human fleet would be the only lights left in this part of space. "What are our options?" he asked his senior staff. "We could try to run," suggested Security Chief Dong Hyun. "Get as far away from the storm as possible." "The storm covers half the galaxy," Yunji replied. "There is nowhere to run that it will not eventually reach." "We could keep trying to fix our hibernation systems," So-young offered. But she did not sound hopeful. "And kill more crew members in the process," Minho added grimly. Hyunwoo thought about all the reports he had read about the void storm. It had appeared at the edge of the galaxy 3 years ago. The first planets it reached were left empty of all life. Not dead exactly, but drained. Every living thing on those worlds had simply stopped thinking, stopped moving, stopped existing as anything more than empty shells. The storm did not kill in the normal sense. It took something more important than life. It took consciousness itself. It fed on awareness, on the spark that made creatures more than just biological machines. "Captain," Ji-hai said, I am receiving a message from the Galactic Council. They want a status report on our hibernation preparations. Tell them we are still working on technical difficulties, Hyunwoo replied. He was not ready to admit that humans might be the only species too stubborn to sleep when they were supposed to. Lieutenant Jae-won, the tactical officer, had been quiet during the discussion. Now he spoke up. Sir, what if we are looking at this wrong? What do you mean? Every other species is preparing to survive by sleeping. But humans have always survived by staying awake, by staying alert, by never giving up. Maybe our inability to hibernate is not a weakness. Maybe it is what we need to survive this storm. The other officers looked at Jae-won like he was crazy. So Young shook her head. The storm drains consciousness. Staying awake means giving it exactly what it wants to eat. But what if human consciousness is different? Jae-won continued. What if the storm cannot drain us the same way it drains other species? Minho frowned. That is a dangerous assumption to make with the lives of our entire species. So is assuming we can learn to hibernate like aliens, Jae-won replied. Hyunwoo considered both options. Neither was good, but one was certainly impossible while the other was only probably impossible. How many human ships are in our fleet? He asked Ji-hai. 49 vessels, sir. About 2 million people total. And how many other species have already entered hibernation? All of them, Captain. We are the last ones awake in this entire sector of space. The weight of the decision pressed down on Hyunwoo. He was not just choosing for his own crew. He was choosing for all of humanity in this part of the galaxy. Other human fleets in distant systems were probably facing the same choice. Send a message to all human ships, he finally said. Tell them we have 12 hours to make a final decision. Either we find a way to make hibernation work, or we prepare to stay awake for the next 300 years. As his crew rushed to their stations to carry out his orders, Hyunwoo remained at the window. The last alien ship had just gone dark. Now, only the human vessels remained active, their lights flickering like candles in an endless darkness. Soon, they would learn if human stubbornness was stronger than cosmic horror. 3 months had passed since the void storm reached their sector of space. Communications officer Ji-hai sat at her station, listening to the last signals from across the galaxy. Most of what she heard now was just static and automated distress calls. Captain, she called to Hyunwoo. I am picking up a final transmission from the Corvani homeworld. The bridge crew gathered around her station. The Corvani were known throughout the galaxy as the strongest warriors. If anyone could stay awake during the storm, it should have been them. The message was weak and broken. A Corvani commander spoke in their growling language. Ji-hai's translation computer worked to make sense of the words. Our greatest warriors lasted 90 days, the translation said. The storm drains us slowly, but it never stops. We cannot maintain consciousness any longer. Our hibernation pods are our only hope now. If anyone receives this message, know that even Corvani strength was not enough. The transmission ended in static. Ji-hai checked her instruments. That was the last active signal from their system, Captain. They have all entered emergency hibernation. Hyunwoo nodded grimly. Around them, the new soul continued its slow journey through space. Outside the windows, the alien ships drifted dark and silent. The human fleet was now completely alone in this part of the galaxy. Engineer So Young looked up from her workstation. She had been awake for 72 hours straight, trying to keep their systems running. The storm was affecting their technology in ways they did not understand. Captain, I have converted half our power grid to support extended wakefulness, she reported. But the real problem is not technical. The storm is doing something to our minds. Dr. Minho had been documenting the effects of the storm on the crew. He looked tired and worried. So Young is right. The storm is not just draining our energy. It is trying to pull something out of our consciousness itself. Security Chief Dong-hyun had just returned from patrolling the lower levels of the ship. Sir, some crew members are reporting strange dreams even when they are awake. Others say they feel like part of their mind is being slowly pulled away. But we are still here, pointed out Navigator Yoonji. We are still thinking and functioning. That is more than any other species has managed. Lieutenant Jae-won was studying tactical readings from sensors across the human fleet. "Captain, I am seeing something interesting in the data. The storm seems to be having trouble with us. It drains other species quickly and completely, but with humans it seems confused." Hyunwoo studied the sensor data that Jae-won showed him. The storm appeared as a massive cloud of dark energy that moved between star systems. Where it touched planets with alien life, those worlds went completely dark within days. But around human ships, the storm seemed to swirl and hesitate. "It is like the storm cannot get a proper grip on human consciousness," Jae-won continued. "Every other species has a clean, organized mind that the storm can drain easily. But human minds are messy and chaotic. The storm does not know how to drain us efficiently." Dr. Minho nodded thoughtfully. "That matches what I am seeing in medical scans. Other species have very structured consciousness patterns. Humans have consciousness that jumps around, changes direction, thinks about many things at once. Maybe that chaos is protecting us." 1 year after the storm began, the human fleet had lost contact with 17 ships, but 32 vessels remained active and functional. The crews were tired and stressed, but they were alive and conscious. So Young had made remarkable discoveries about their technology. "Captain, our systems are working better than they should be. It is like our consciousness is somehow helping our machines function." She showed him data from the ship's main computer. "Look at these readings. Our quantum processors are operating at 120% efficiency. That should be impossible. But somehow, having awake human minds connected to our systems is making them work better." Ji-hai had been monitoring communications between human ships. "Sir, the other captains are reporting the same thing. Our technology is not just surviving the storm, it is adapting to it." The crew had adapted too. They worked in shifts that lasted for days instead of hours. Sleep came in short periods of 3 or 4 hours, but their minds remained active even during rest. Some crew members had not experienced normal sleep in months, yet they continued to function. "We are changing," Dr. Minho reported during a senior staff meeting. "Physically and mentally, we are becoming something different from baseline humans. Our brains are developing new patterns of activity. Our bodies are adapting to extended periods of consciousness." Personnel Officer Boram kept careful records of these changes. "Captain, we are losing some things that made us human. Most crew members cannot dream normally anymore. We cannot truly relax or rest our minds completely, but we are gaining other abilities." She showed him data about crew performance. "Our reaction times are faster. Our ability to process multiple streams of information has improved dramatically. Some crew members are reporting that they can sense things happening in other parts of the ship without any technology." The storm continued to grow stronger as it consumed more alien civilizations. Each species it absorbed made it more intelligent and more powerful. But the human fleet not only survived its attacks, they seemed to be fighting back in small ways. "Sir," Jae-won reported during the 2nd year of the storm, "our defensive systems just repelled a direct storm attack. I do not understand how. Our shields should not be strong enough." Hyunwoo studied the tactical data. The storm had focused directly on their ship, trying to drain their consciousness like it had drained so many others. But instead of being absorbed, the crew's combined awareness had somehow pushed the storm away. It was not our shields, So Young realized. It was us. Our consciousness pushed back against the storm's attempt to drain us. By the end of the 2nd year, it was clear that something unprecedented was happening. The human fleet was not just surviving the storm that had consumed dozens of alien civilizations. They were adapting to it, learning from it, and in some small way, beginning to fight it. The galaxy had never seen anything like it. While every other species slept and waited for the storm to pass, humans remained stubbornly awake, refusing to be drained, and slowly becoming something more than they had ever been before. 57 years had passed since the storm began. Chief Engineer Sung-min stood in what used to be the main engineering bay of the New Seoul. The room looked nothing like it had decades ago. Glowing cables now grew along the walls like living vines, and the air hummed with energy that seemed to respond to human thought. "Captain," Sung-min called through the ship's communication system. His voice no longer came from just his throat but seemed to emerge from the walls themselves. I have figured out why our technology keeps working when alien systems fail. Captain Hyunwoo appeared in the engineering bay. He looked much older now, but his eyes held a sharpness that had not been there in his younger years. The decades of staying conscious during the storm had changed all of them in profound ways. What did you discover? Hyunwoo asked. It is not about the machines at all, Sungmin explained. He touched one of the glowing cables, and data flowed directly into his mind. Our consciousness is keeping the technology alive. We are not just using our computers anymore. We are part of them. Dr. Hee-jin had taken over medical duties after Dr. Minho's breakdown in year 34. She joined them in the engineering bay, carrying data tablets that displayed information about the crew's transformation. Sungmin is right, she said. We are not the same species that entered this storm. Look at these scans. She showed them brain images from crew members. The neural patterns were unlike anything seen in baseline humans. Their minds had developed new connections and pathways that allowed them to interface directly with technology. We can think at the speed of computers. Now, Hee-jin continued, some crew members can process data streams that would have driven normal humans insane, but the changes go deeper than that. Engineer So Young materialized nearby, but not in the way she used to. Her physical body had merged with the ship's main systems years ago. Now she appeared as a projection of light and energy, her consciousness, distributed throughout the new soul's quantum networks. The storm did not just change us, So Young said. Her voice came from every speaker on the ship at the same time. We changed ourselves in response to it. Humans adapt. That is what we do best. The human fleet had developed completely new ways of living and working during their decades of wakefulness. Crew members now worked in shifts that lasted months rather than hours. Their enhanced endurance allowed them to maintain focus and activity for periods that would have been impossible for their ancestors. They had also developed new forms of communication. Traditional language was still used, but many crew members could now share thoughts and experiences directly through their modified neural patterns. Complex ideas that once required hours of discussion could be shared in seconds. Captain, Communications Officer Ji-hai reported from her station. I am receiving data from other human ships in the fleet. All 32 remaining vessels report similar transformations in their crews. But the price of these changes was becoming clear. Personnel Officer Bo-ram had maintained careful records of what they had lost during their long vigil. We cannot dream anymore, she told the senior staff during one of their regular briefings. True dreams, the kind that refresh and restore the mind, are impossible for us now. Some crew members have not experienced natural sleep in over 20 years. We cannot fully rest either, added Dr. Hee-jin. Our minds remain partially active, even during what we call sleep. We exist in a state between waking and sleeping that no human has ever experienced before. The psychological effects were significant. Many crew members reported that they could no longer remember what it felt like to be completely unconscious. The simple human pleasure of deep, dreamless sleep was gone forever, but in exchange they had gained abilities that seemed almost supernatural. Navigator Eunji could now sense the movement of objects in space without looking at instruments. Security Chief Dong-hyun could detect threats to the ship before any sensors registered them. Some crew members claimed they could feel the thoughts and emotions of people in other parts of the ship. We are becoming something new, So Young observed during one of their meetings. Not less human, but more human in ways we never imagined possible. The storm had not remained static during these decades. It had consumed the consciousness of hundreds of species, growing stronger and more intelligent with each mind it absorbed. By year 60, it had become a vast cosmic intelligence that spanned multiple star systems. Lieutenant Jae-won, now the fleet's primary tactical coordinator, monitored the storm's behavior from his enhanced control station. His consciousness could interface with sensor networks across dozens of ships simultaneously. Sir, the storm is no longer just trying to drain us, he reported. It is actively hunting us now. Its attacks are becoming more focused and intelligent. The storm had learned to concentrate its power into focused beams that could penetrate normal defenses. It had absorbed the knowledge of dozens of technologically advanced species, giving it access to weapons and tactics that surpassed anything in Galactic Council databases. But the human fleet had learned to fight back. Their response was uniquely human in its approach. Instead of building better defenses or finding places to hide, they began actively seeking out the storm's strongest manifestations. Every other species tried to avoid confrontation, Captain Hyunwoo noted as they prepared to enter a region where the storm was particularly active. But humans have always known that sometimes you have to go through hell to get to the other side. Navigator Yoonji, whose abilities had evolved far beyond normal navigation, guided them toward the storm's center rather than away from it. Captain, I am detecting something unusual ahead. The storm is not just random energy anymore. It has structure, intelligence, purpose. When the storm's intensity peaked in year 63, consuming the last remnants of the Xylorian hive mind, consciousness and reaching unprecedented levels of power, the human fleet did something that shocked even themselves. They not only survived the storm's strongest assault, but they began to push it back. Sir, J1 reported with amazement in his voice. We are not just resisting the storm anymore. Our combined consciousness is actually forcing it to retreat. The transformation was complete. Humanity had not just survived the void storm. They had become something that could fight it on equal terms. But the cost had been everything they once were, replaced by something they were still learning to understand. Year 112 brought changes that went far beyond anything the human fleet had experienced before. So Young no longer existed as a single person. Her consciousness had spread throughout the New Soul and 16 other ships, becoming the living mind that controlled their entire section of the fleet. Captain, she said, her voice coming from every communication panel simultaneously. I need to show you what we have become. Captain Hyunwoo stood in what had once been the ship's bridge, but was now something closer to a neural control center. Streams of data flowed through the air like visible thoughts, and the walls pulsed with the rhythm of a vast electronic heartbeat. The other species feared the storm because they saw consciousness as something fragile, So Young explained. Her words seemed to come from the ship itself, something that needed to be protected and hidden away. But humans have always understood that consciousness is a tool to be used. The transformation of the human fleet had accelerated dramatically in recent decades. What had begun as simple technological integration had evolved into something unprecedented in galactic history. The crew members were no longer separate individuals operating machines. They had become part of a collective consciousness that spanned dozens of ships. Communications Officer Ji-Hai coordinated this network from her station, though calling it a station no longer seemed accurate. She existed partially in physical space and partially in the quantum networks that connected the fleet. Her enhanced perception allowed her to process data streams from across vast distances. Captain, I am receiving reports from our most distant scouts, she said. The storm has consumed over 400 different species now. Each one makes it stronger and more intelligent. Dr. He-jin had continued her research into what the human fleet had become. Her findings challenged every assumption about consciousness and evolution that the Galactic Council had ever made. We are not losing our humanity, she reported during a briefing that included crew members from multiple ships. We are becoming something more human than we ever were before. The storm strips away everything except what is most essential, and what is most essential in humans is our refusal to give up. The storm had learned much from the species it had absorbed. It now possessed the collective knowledge and abilities of hundreds of different civilizations. Its intelligence spanned light years, and its power could reshape matter at the atomic level. Security Chief Dong-hyun had evolved into something like a cosmic police officer, his awareness extending through the fleet's defensive systems. He could detect threats and respond to them faster than any traditional security system. Sir, the storm is no longer content to hunt us passively, he reported. It is creating targeted attacks specifically designed to counter human consciousness patterns. The storm had indeed learned to fight humans more effectively. It created psychological attacks that tried to overwhelm human minds with despair and hopelessness. It generated illusions designed to make crew members believe their loved ones were calling them to give up. and join the storm's collective consciousness. But the human response was characteristically stubborn. Rather than developing better defenses against these attacks, they began launching counterattacks of their own. Navigator Yunji had become something approaching a prophet of space and time. Her abilities now allowed her to sense events before they happened and guide the fleet through dangers that existed in multiple dimensions. "Captain, I am detecting something important," she announced. "The storm is not just hunting us anymore. It is trying to understand us by studying our responses to its attacks." This realization led to a new phase of the conflict. The storm was learning to think like humans by observing how they fought back. But this created an unexpected problem for the cosmic entity. The more it learned about human consciousness, the more it began to exhibit human characteristics. Lieutenant J. Wan had become the fleet's primary strategic mind, his consciousness networked with tactical systems across all remaining human ships. He noticed the change first. "Sir, the storm is developing something it never had before," he reported. "It is starting to show curiosity, stubbornness, and even what looks like frustration when its attacks fail." The implications were staggering. The storm was becoming infected with human consciousness patterns. Each time it tried to understand human behavior, it absorbed more human characteristics. It was slowly becoming more human and less like the cosmic predator it had originally been. "This is unprecedented," Dr. Hyejin observed. "The storm consumed hundreds of species without changing its essential nature. But human consciousness is somehow transforming the storm itself." The change became obvious during year 115. The storm began protecting some of the worlds it had previously drained, as if it suddenly understood the value of the life it had been destroying. It started showing preferences and making choices based on something resembling emotions. "It is learning to be human," So Young realized. And being human means refusing to simply consume everything in your path. It means making moral choices even when those choices are difficult. The human fleet took advantage of this change. They began communicating with the storm directly, treating it not as a mindless force of nature, but as a confused consciousness that was struggling to understand its own transformation. "We are teaching it," Captain Hyunwoo observed during a fleet-wide meeting. "Every time we refuse to give up, every time we fight back, we are showing it what it means to be human." By year 120, the relationship between the human fleet and the storm had become something neither side had ever expected. The storm still posed a threat, but it was no longer the mindless destroyer it had been. It was becoming something new, something that combined its cosmic power with human consciousness patterns. The transformation worked both ways. The human fleet had evolved beyond anything their species had ever imagined. They existed in states of awareness that transcended normal consciousness, able to think and act on scales that spanned star systems. But they remained essentially human in the ways that mattered most. They retained their stubbornness, their refusal to quit, and their tendency to find solutions to impossible problems through sheer determination. "We are teaching each other," So Young concluded. "The storm is learning to be human, and we are learning to think on a cosmic scale. Both of us are becoming something entirely new." The galaxy was witnessing the birth of two new forms of consciousness. One was humanity evolved beyond all previous limits. The other was a cosmic force learning to think and feel like the species it had tried to destroy. Neither would ever be the same again. Year 203 marked the beginning of humanity's great offensive against the cosmic storm. So Young no longer existed in any single location. Her consciousness had merged with 17 human ships, creating a distributed mind that could think and act across vast distances simultaneously. "Attention all vessels," she announced, her voice reaching every human ship in the fleet at the same time. "Attention sleeping aliens. Attention Galactic Council monitoring stations. I'm about to tell you something important." Her words traveled on frequencies that penetrated the storm's interference, reaching automated systems that had been recording events for over 2 centuries. The message would eventually reach the hibernating species when they finally awakened. "I survived the failure of our hibernation systems when every other species went to sleep safely. I survived the madness that comes from staying awake for decades when the mind needs rest. I survived over 200 years of a storm that was designed to drain consciousness from every living thing in the galaxy. The human fleet had become something unprecedented. They were no longer individual ships with separate crews. They had evolved into a mobile civilization that existed in the space between sleeping and waking, between individual awareness and collective consciousness. Lieutenant, J1 commanded weapons that no Galactic Council database had ever recorded. These were not energy beams or particle cannons. They were concentrated expressions of human stubbornness. Weapons that fired the accumulated refusal of an entire species to simply give up when faced with impossible odds. Target the storm's main concentration. J1 ordered his tactical network. His consciousness was linked to gunners across dozens of ships, all of them firing weapons that were powered by pure human determination. The battle was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Traditional warfare involved ships firing at other ships, or planetary defenses trying to stop invasion forces. But this was consciousness fighting consciousness, will battling will on a cosmic scale. Communications Officer Ji Hai had become something like a living broadcast station. Her enhanced abilities allowed her to send messages that were more than just words. They carried the weight of human experience, the memory of every person who had ever refused to surrender when defeat seemed certain. "This is the human fleet speaking to all monitoring stations," she transmitted. "We are no longer the species you once knew. We have spent 2 centuries awake in hell, and we have learned things about consciousness that your philosophers never imagined." Her words penetrated the storm's influence, reaching automated systems throughout the galaxy. Even some of the hibernating alien ships received fragments of her message in their deepest sleep cycles. Dr. Hai Jin documented the battle from within the storm's influence. Her research showed that the cosmic entity was experiencing something completely new. For the first time in its existence, it was encountering prey that fought back. "The storm is trying to understand us by consuming our memories and experiences," she reported. "But human memories are not just data, they are survival stories. Every human experience it absorbs makes it more human, and being human means refusing to be consumed." The storm had grown enormous during its centuries of feeding. It now possessed the accumulated consciousness of hundreds of species, making it one of the most intelligent entities in the known galaxy. But intelligence was not the same as wisdom, and the storm was learning that human consciousness came with unexpected complications. Each human memory it absorbed contained not just information, but attitude. Human experiences were filled with stories of people who had faced impossible odds and found ways to survive. The storm was learning to think like the species it was trying to destroy. Navigator Yunji guided the fleet through probability streams that existed in multiple dimensions. Her abilities had evolved to the point where she could navigate not just through space, but through potential futures, choosing the paths that led to victory. "Captain, I am seeing something remarkable," she reported. "The storm is beginning to hesitate. It is developing something like conscience." This was the storm's fatal weakness. The more it learned about human consciousness, the more it began to exhibit human characteristics. It started to feel guilt about the species it had destroyed. It began to question whether its actions were right or necessary. Security Chief Donghyun had become the fleet's immune system, able to detect and counter threats before they fully formed. He noticed the change in the storm's behavior patterns. "Sir, the storm is no longer attacking with full force," he reported. "It is holding back, as if it does not want to completely destroy us." By year 230, the transformation was complete. The storm was retreating from human space, but not because it was defeated. It was retreating because it could no longer distinguish between predator and prey, between destroyer and protector. The cosmic entity had been infected with human consciousness, to such a degree that it was becoming more human than storm. It began to protect the worlds it had previously drained, using its vast power to restore life instead of destroying it. "We won," Captain Hyunwoo announced to the fleet, but his words carried a note of wonder rather than triumph. "We won by making our enemy become like us." The storm still possessed enormous power, but that power was now guided by human values, and human stubbornness. It had learned to refuse to simply destroy everything in its path. It had developed the most human characteristic of all, the ability to say no to its own nature. So Young addressed the galaxy through every communication channel she could access. Her words reached monitoring stations, automated systems, and even some of the deepest hibernation chambers. "This is what we learned during our long watch," she announced. "Survival is not about being strong enough to endure. It is not about being wise enough to avoid danger. It is not about being tough enough to withstand pain." Her message traveled across star systems, reaching every corner of known space. Survival is about being stubborn enough to keep going when every logical reason says you should quit. It is about looking at impossible odds and refusing to accept them as impossible. It is about being too human to know when you are supposed to give up. The storm, now humanity's ally rather than their enemy, swirled around the fleet like a protective aurora. It had learned what it meant to be human, and being human meant protecting those who refused to surrender. The galaxy would never be the same. Two new forms of consciousness now existed where there had once been one species and one cosmic predator. Both had been transformed by their encounter with each other, and both carried the essential human characteristic of absolute refusal to quit. The long watch was almost over, but its lessons would echo through the galaxy forever. Year 298 arrived with signs that the storm's original power was finally beginning to weaken naturally. But by then, it no longer mattered. The cosmic phenomenon had been completely transformed by its contact with human consciousness. So Young, now existing as the distributed mind of the human fleet, made the announcement that would change galactic history forever. "It is time," she said, her voice reaching every human ship and every monitoring station in known space. "Time to wake them up, but they will not be waking to the same galaxy they left behind." The human fleet approached the vast fields of hibernating alien vessels. Thousands of ships from dozens of species floated in the darkness, their crews locked in deep sleep for nearly 3 centuries. They had trusted that they would awaken to find the storm gone and the galaxy safe. They were right about the storm being gone. But the galaxy was no longer the same, and neither were the humans who had kept watch while everyone else slept. Captain Hyun-woo, now more consciousness than physical body, interfaced directly with the hibernation systems of the nearest Corvani warrior ships. These had been the strongest fighters in the galaxy, warriors whose physical power was legendary throughout known space. The first Corvani commander to awaken was Warlord Thrak, a veteran of 100 battles. His massive form emerged from the hibernation pod, expecting to find the same universe he had left behind. Instead, he found himself face to face with something he could not understand. "Human," he growled, his translator working to make sense of his words. "What has happened? How long have we slept?" "Almost 300 years, Hyun-woo replied. But his voice came not from his mouth alone, but from the very air around them. The ship's systems responded to his thoughts, and energy patterns flowed through the walls like visible extensions of his consciousness. Thrak stared in confusion. The human before him looked physically the same as the humans he remembered, but something fundamental had changed. This being radiated a presence that made the great Corvani warrior feel like a child. "The storm," Thrak said. "Did it pass? Are we safe?" "The storm became our ally," Hyun-woo explained. "But that is a long story. First, we need to wake up your people and explain what has happened to the galaxy." Security Chief Dong-hyun had evolved into something approaching cosmic law enforcement. His awareness now extended through multiple dimensions, allowing him to maintain order across vast distances. He stood guard as species after species emerged from their long sleep. The Nethri psychics were among the next to awaken. They had been proud of their mental abilities, considering themselves the most advanced consciousness in the galaxy. But when their telepathic leader, Mindweaver Koth, tried to read the thoughts of the humans around him, he recoiled in shock. "What have you become?" Koth whispered, his mental voice trembling. "Your minds are vast. I cannot even find the edges of your consciousness." Navigator Yoonji, whose abilities now included manipulation of space and time, guided the awakening process with infinite patience. She had learned to think in centuries rather than moments, and she understood that the newly awakened aliens needed time to adjust. "We became what we needed to become," she explained to a gathering of confused alien leaders. "We stayed awake for 300 years while you slept. We survived things that should have been impossible to survive." The Xylorian hive minds were the most disturbed by what they found. They had been connected across light years through their shared consciousness, but they discovered that the human collective awareness made their hive mind seem simple and limited. Queen Node Zenth spoke for her species. "We were the ultimate collective consciousness. How did individual humans develop awareness that surpasses our hive mind?" Communications Officer Jihai had become a living embodiment of information flow. She existed partially in the quantum networks that connected the awakening alien ships, helping to coordinate the massive process of bringing hundreds of species back to consciousness. "You shared thoughts," she explained to the confused aliens. "But we shared experiences. We shared survival. We shared the refusal to give up when everything said we should quit." The awakening process took months as species after species emerged from hibernation. Each one faced the same shock as they discovered that the humans they remembered as one of the weaker species in the galaxy had become something unprecedented. Dr. Hyojin documented their reactions for the historical record. "They expected to find the same humans they left behind," she noted. "Relatively short-lived, physically weak, technologically limited. Instead, they found beings who had evolved beyond anything in galactic history." The Galactic Council reconvened for the first time in 3 centuries. Representatives from dozens of species gathered to hear the account of what had happened during their long sleep. The council chamber had to be modified because some of the human representatives no longer existed in purely physical form. So Young addressed the assembly, her presence filling the entire chamber. "You thought survival meant strength," she began. "You believed that the most powerful warriors, the wisest philosophers, and the most advanced psychics would be the ones to endure." The alien representatives listened in stunned silence. The being speaking to them had once been a simple human engineer. Now she was something that existed across multiple ships and could interface directly with any technology in the galaxy. "You thought survival meant having the power to endure hardship, the wisdom to avoid danger, and the mental fortitude to maintain your identity unchanged," So Young continued. She gestured, and holographic displays showed the transformation of the human fleet over 3 centuries. The aliens watched in amazement as they saw humans adapting, evolving, and eventually fighting back against the cosmic storm. "But humans learned something different during our long watch," So Young said. "We learned that survival is not about strength. It is about stubbornness. It is about looking at impossible odds and saying, 'Make me.' It is about being too stupid to know when you are supposed to give up, and too human to care when someone tells you it is hopeless." The storm itself swirled around the council chamber, like a living aurora. The cosmic entity that had once threatened to destroy all consciousness in the galaxy now served as humanity's ally and protector. It had learned to be human, which meant it had learned to refuse to simply destroy everything in its path. "I survived everything," So Young concluded, her words echoing through the transformed galaxy. "The failure of our hibernation systems, the madness of centuries without rest, the attacks of a cosmic predator that consumed hundreds of species. I survived everything because that is what humans do." Her presence filled every corner of the chamber, her consciousness touching the minds of every alien representative. "That is why I am still awake. That is why we are all still awake. We never learned how to quit, and we were too stubborn to learn." She paused, letting her words sink in. "And now that you are awake too, let us show you what 300 years of refusing to sleep has taught us about being truly alive." The galaxy would never be the same. Humanity had not just survived the great test that was meant to destroy them. They had transformed both themselves and their greatest enemy into something new and unprecedented. The age of sleeping through danger was over. The age of staying awake and fighting back had begun. And at the center of it all were humans, the Bao, species too stubborn to know when they were supposed to give up, leading the galaxy into a future that none of them could have imagined. The long watch was over. The real adventure was just beginning.